In this tutorial, we'll cover some of the basic concepts of RentPro. After logging on, the first screen that we're presented with is the RentPro dashboard. The dashboard details events that require our immediate attention, such as overdue rents, expired tenancies, and upcoming safety checks. The first thing that I'd like to do is to add a new landlord. We can do this by clicking on Landlords in the main menu bar and then selecting Add Landlord. This presents a form which is fairly typical when adding a new item to RentPro. A number of fields are available for us to supply our landlord information. Some of these fields have a red asterisk alongside them, meaning that they are mandatory and the data must be supplied. The others are optional. You'll also note that some fields have a question mark alongside them, meaning that inline help is available. We can view the help text by clicking on the question mark and then close the pop-up by clicking on the little X. So we'll go ahead and enter some landlord details. When you've finished, click on the Add Landlord button at the bottom of the screen. This will immediately bring you to the Add Property screen, and you'll see that the landlord that we have just entered has been pre-selected for us. The main items of data that we have to enter here are the elements of the property address. We can select the town from this drop-down list. If the town that we require isn't available, then we can add a new one by clicking on New Town. But in this case, I'll use one of the pre-existing towns. There are two other important pieces of information I want to draw your attention to. The first is the opening balance date. If you're an established letting agent or landlord, then we don't expect you to enter all your retrospective data into RentPro, such as rent receipts, expenses, payments, etc. Instead, you can choose a date on which you want to start managing a property within RentPro. In this example, I'll choose the start of the year. The other important field is the management fee. If you're a letting agent, then this is the fee which you will charge the landlord to manage this property on his or her behalf. This RentPro account is configured to apply fees as a percentage of rents collected, but other configurations are available. A default value of 10% has been suggested. I'll go along with this and I'll click on Add Property at the bottom of the screen. Our property has now been added, and the last thing I want to do is to record some tenancy details. You'll note that a number of tabs are available to us. I'm going to select the Tenancies tab. To add a new tenancy, click on the New Tenancy button. Tenancy is probably the most complex item within RentPro, but we've tried to lay things out as clear as possible. The first thing that we must do is to define the tenant associated with the tenancy. We can either select an existing tenant from this drop-down list, or we can create a new tenant by clicking on this link. I'll choose this option. We can optionally record guarantor details, but I'll skip this for now. We now record the actual tenancy details. The rental period is how often the tenant is expected to pay rent. Is it weekly, monthly, quarterly, etc.? I'll leave this at monthly. When recording the tenancy start date, specify the date on which the tenancy actually started, even if this predates the opening balance date we discussed earlier. RentPro won't apply any rents until after the opening balance date. We'll leave the tenancy duration as 12 months. The rent value is how much rent the tenant is expected to pay per rental period, i.e. per week, per month. I'll enter a value of £800. If a tenant had a rent balance on the opening balance date of the property, then we can specify that here. But as our tenancy start date is after the opening balance date, then this isn't applicable in this particular case. If we want to charge the landlord for finding a tenant, then we can specify a letting fee. I'll enter a value of £250. Finally, we'll record that a deposit of £800 is also due from the tenant. That's all we need to do, so I'll click on the Add Tenancy button. That's it. Our tenancy details have now been added. I hope you found this tutorial useful. Once you're comfortable with the principles that we've covered here, then please check out the other tutorials that we have available.